Okay, so look, we will get into it. We'll get into Raw, we'll chat about it, and we'll have some fun like we always do. But it would be very wrong of me to not start this week's episode of Raw Ups and Downs by just sending out all my thoughts and well wishes to the family of Shad Gaspard, who you probably remember used to be in Crime Time. Now, if you haven't seen the news, he was basically lost at sea. We don't really have any of the details, but he saved his son, and there's been a search party looking for him, and nobody can find him right now, and that, frankly, is quite terrifying and it's heartbreaking. I don't want to, not that it matters or makes a difference, but Shad actually used to watch WhatCulture, and every time we were at events, he was very friendly to all of us. He's a super nice guy, so I'm just sending, like I say, I just hope this turns out to be okay, as worrying as it is. But yes, my name is Simon Miller. What we shall do is we shall run the intro, and then, like I say, we'll just try and have some nonsense like we always do. Let's up those downs. Now look, the Edge Randy Orton stuff is great. They both know how to cut promos in empty arenas when there's no fans, and Randy Orton's point makes all the sense in the world. Ever since Edge has returned, he's had a bunch of bells and whistles, and the Viper knows deep down in his guts that if they have a proper wrestling match, he will whoop the rated R superstar's ass. That is an up. And it was Randy Orton that started all this off by cutting a promo in the ring with Charlie Caruso, and when Edge interrupted him, they just kind of had a new buzzword. You remember the buzzword from before WrestleMania was grit? Well, now the new buzzword is doubt. So Randy Orton's all like, oh, doubt, 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 and Edge is all like grit, grit, grit. So we basically get Grit Doubt, the world's lamest detective. And I really thought all this rocked too, because again, both of these guys get it, and they just make it so believable. But it's everything we're doing around it that is absolutely blowing my brain. Charlie Caruso, as mentioned, started this, and she looked dead into the camera now like I'm doing, and she basically went, hello, WWE Universe. Do you know we are about to see the greatest wrestling match in history, the greatest wrestling match ever. WWE has even made a graphic where Edge is on one side and Randy on the other, and there's text down the middle like Star Wars that says the greatest wrestling match ever. I mean, what are we doing? Do you know how ridiculous that sounds? And do you know how far you've set the bar now? Let's say we do see Edge versus Randy Orton at Backlash, and it did get confirmed before the night was done. If they only now have the second best wrestling match ever, we as fans can go, well, that's crap. That was rubbish. I was expecting the best, and you only gave me number 2. So I don't get it at all, but look, I like Edge, I like Randy Orton, and their performances here were just faboo. I also want to point out, every time I hear Randy Orton's music, I laugh. I don't know why, but you get a lyric, and the singer just goes, "Wah," and he does it about 4 or 5 times, and I have absolutely no clue what is going on. Anyway, yes, just to clarify, Edge is accepted because he didn't last week. He's quite nervous, but Randy Orton's really confident, and they will be having the greatest match ever. I mean, what a damn time to be alive. We cut backstage to Seth Rollins, who was telling Don't Call Him Buddy Murphy that he'd had a revelation, and by the way, Murphy here was dressed like Iron Man, and said they should both go to the ring. So they did. Now, what this meant was that we had 2 promo segments back to back, and I don't mean to be a wrestling nerd, whack on your switch, but that is just too much when you don't have any fans in the crowd, because you get this deathly silence and this no atmosphere. At least when you do have a couple of dudes scrapping, you get this. Ah! Oh! Ah! At least it's a little bit something different, and because of that, it just felt really long-winded, and therefore it's got to get it down. It also ties into the fact that I think Seth Rollins' revolution, his epiphany, came too soon. I was loving all his character work last week, where he like a homeless bum that had just stumbled off the street, and now within 7 days he'd gone, you know what, I got over it. The fact that I tried to murder Rey Mysterio's eye made me realise I need to be a leader again. Also, Rey, I don't know when I'll see you again, but you are welcome. And of course, we would all say that if someone tried to take our eyeballs. I always know that if someone is trying to stab me, I'm like, thank you so much, friend. Who needs to see? These two were then interrupted by Humberto Carrillo, who was just so upset and so mad that Seth had tried to take out his hero and that maybe his hero was dead. So it turns out we were going to get Murphy versus the Chump. Yeah, it's fine. It was mostly a showcase for Murphy, which I actually do think he needs right now because he hasn't had much momentum as of late. But of course, the flip side to this is that Humberto Carrillo is now more of a chump. I mean, when was the last time he ever won a match? Even if it is recently, I've totally forgotten, but again, sometimes you gotta sacrifice dudes, it gets it up. He got victory after Murphy's Law, and he kept on whipping Humberto afterwards, because as we know, he is a chump until Aleister Black made the save. So it does look like we're going back to the Aleister Black and Buddy Murphy feud, and I'm fine with this, as long as when all is said and done, Aleister Black actually goes on to do something else. He's kind of been treading water for a while now. If you're gonna pull the trigger, pow, you've got to pull that trigger. We had Baron Corbin in the back moaning about how Raw operates there. He was yelling at some referee and some guy in a suit because he hasn't got his own locker room. And the only fundamental flaw was this, is that SmackDown happens in the Performance Center and Raw also happens in the Performance Center, so it didn't click. I also think if we are going to stick with this King stuff, which we are, we got to double down on it. Because Baron was all like, I've been here all day and nobody has even bowed their head to me. So I think we need to take some inspiration from Booker T and turn him into the most royal asshole we've ever seen in our life. I think it would be more entertaining. We also had a little sit-down chat with Liv Morgan, who told us all about her own life and that her mother was her hero. She also had the line, I'm my mother's daughter, and I was like, thanks for that, Liv. Appreciate you catching me up. But forget about that. There's just something about Liv Morgan that's very believable, and she just has a way about her. I think if we can put her in the right storyline, she will go to the top. Also said she's going to learn from her loss to Charlotte Flair a couple of weeks ago and become the Raw Women's Champion. I do not doubt it. And speaking of Charlotte Flair, she was out next dressed like a peacock, and I have said time and time again that I actually quite like the Queen, and that leads to people on the internet going, Simon, you bald ass, whatever, but I have to concede we are running the risk of overexposing Charlotte Flair. She does not need to be on 3 shows. It's just too much, and you know what it reminds me of? Shane McMahon. I don't want to start wiggling again every time I see Charlotte Flair, so as a little bit of a warning shot across the bow, WWE is getting her down. Be smart. It was also bonkers because after saying she has accepted a match with Bayley on SmackDown, right now she wants Ruby Riott to come out because she knows that Ruby has something to say. It was like wrestling Tourette's. She may as well just grab the microphone and gone, muffins. I was like, why? What? Ruby Riott? Why do you care about Ruby Riott? And then they had a match, and you know what Charlotte Flair did? She beat her in around about 2 milliseconds, and Riott tapped out to the figure 8. What did we achieve? Anyway, that was that. You tell me in the comments below. And then we zoomed to the back again when Bobby Lashley was about to be interviewed, when MVP arrived and he shooed away Charlie Caruso because he had something to say to Bob. And it was simple. Maybe you should start concentrating on proper trophies instead of your trophy wife. Shots fired. Lashley was kind of annoyed, but you could also see the truth in his eyes. Now, the only kind of stupid thing about this is that MVP is selling the full Nelson that Bobby Lashley has started doing as if it's, I don't know, the most devastating move in all of sports entertainment, but we haven't been doing it long enough. I think we could have paced this better, but again, if you want to get it over, I suppose you do need lines like this. This does get a lot better later on, though, with one minor criticism. Makes me happy. We also learned that round 2 of what the Street Profits and the Viking Raiders were going to do is an axe throwing contest, and there ain't no 2 ways about it now. Eric and Ivar are officially Vikings because the Street Profits arrived at their camp, I suppose, and they had brethren, they had people riding on horses. They are quite literally Vikings. Ford and Dawkins were also so scared they thought about bailing on all of this, I presume because they were like, oh my gosh, they're going to pillage their hometown. I'll talk about it in a sec. And then, my friends, we had the greatest segment in the history of Raw. And I'm not kidding. Asuka was out to celebrate her championship win, and it made me happier than I've ever been in my entire life. It's not just an up, it's an Asuka up. In short, not only did they dance around the ring because they were just so pleased with themselves, but to celebrate, Kairi Sane pulled out a recorder and probably played the worst recorder song I've ever heard in my life. So she went from a wizard last week to a musician this week, and Asuka even went on Twitter afterwards and said, yeah, that was pretty damn terrible, but this was a delight. This was a delight. It was so good. If anyone says to me, Simon, I want to get into pro wrestling, what can you show me? I'm going to show them this. They mostly just screamed here for large portions of this, and I don't know why that's so entertaining. I guess because they're having fun, I start having fun too. And we also found out who Asuka's first contender is going to be, and of course, no surprises, it's Nia Jax. She was enraged that Asuka just got handed the title, and Asuka was so fed up with this, and like, man, I don't want to listen to your jargon. She just beat her up. How good is that? A babyface champion that won't take any crap. Why is WWE taking so long to do this? It's then back to Corbin, who had another strange promo where he said not only is he going to beat Drew McIntyre later, but then he'll beat him again at WrestleMania for the World Championships. What are you going to do, Baron? You're going to wait, 10 months or more than that until you challenge him again? It's called capitalization. It's called momentum. I get it. Drew was also watching this on a TV screen somewhere else in the Performance Center and he found it very amusing. I can see why. WWE then just had a graphic saying that Kevin Owens is back and he's going to be hosting the Kevin Owens show. And that really made me a little bit sad. I mean, I was overjoyed that KO is back on Raw, but couldn't we have advertised this beforehand or at least come up with a better idea rather than, oh yeah, Kevin Owens is back. We know he's been away. He wanted to do a talk show, so we were like, yeah, Kev, come back. Cool. Nah. Down. Right, okay, Bobby Lashley time. He was taking on R-Truth again, which was fine, but I do have to say we've actually found the exception when it comes to Truth, because I don't really like this Pretty Ricky character. I mean, no one could pull it off as well as he did, but it just feels like WWE trying to recreate the Little Jimmy stuff, and the reason Little Jimmy works so well is that it was an invisible child that only R-Truth could see. That's not the same as just sticking some teeth into your mouth. I mean, if I do this, my name is Sweltering Simon, and when it's hot outside, I start to sweat and I embarrass myself. Kind of hate me a little bit right now, because that kind of stuff is just annoying. So it is getting it down, although I did appreciate R-Truth comparing Bobby Lashley's full Nelson to Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons. Thankfully, this wasn't the point or the focus here because that was all on Bobby. Once again, he did get a victory after using his full Nelson, so we are doubling down on that. But afterwards, MVP came out, and I tell you, I just like these two together. Getting up. For some reason, Lana was then flipping out backstage, and why would she care? I didn't understand why she cared last week. Bobby Lashley hasn't even had a conversation with her now for around about 14 days. The last time they were in cahoots when they were flipping ties. It's just absolutely baffling. What difference does it make to Lana if Bobby Lashley teams up with MVP? He's still your husband. Stupid. Down. And all of this did bring us to our tag team championship match between the Iconics and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross. And while you think I would have hated this, and while you think it should have got her down, quite amazingly, it is getting it up. Why? Well, it's all to do with the fallout afterwards, because Peyton Royce was an idiot here, and she kept throwing Alexa Bliss into the ring post, and even though the referee told her to stop, she didn't. That meant they got disqualified, and Alexa Bliss and Nikki Cross are still your women's tag team champions. Now that is dumb, but I just liked what happened afterwards. Billie Kay and Peyton Royce were arguing, and Billie was so annoyed at her partner for being such a goof, she slapped her right round the face. And then as soon as she realized what she'd done, they embraced, they gave a hug, and she was like, oh no, I'm losing my mind. Now I do want to point out, my autocorrect when I was making notes said that she smelled Peyton Royce, and that would make for a very different segment, but let's not worry about that. Because here's two things. One, even though I can't stand disqualification finishes in WWE, you should utilize them if you're trying to build a story here, and that's what I think we're trying to do. And two, there were a bunch of rumors before the Iconics came back that they were going to have a couple of new characters. And I think we are going to head in that direction. And amazingly, WWE didn't just go, well, just throw them back on television and they could be somebody else. Maybe they're actually going to tie it into a narrative, and that is what professional wrestling is all about. Now, of course, there's every chance I'm wrong, and this is the start of the breakup of the Iconics, which would be the dumbest move ever, because they're clearly better together, but I'm laying it all on the line, and I liked how this smelled, as my autocorrect said. We also saw Kairi Sane in the back, and she was continuing to play her recorder, when Nia Jax, that Mother Hubbard, attacked her. And I was so annoyed, I was like, don't interrupt greatness when I'm witnessing it for the second time. But again, we booked Asuka so well here. She was livid that her best friend had been beaten up, so she went and found Nia Jax. And did Asuka get left laying? No, she didn't. She whopped Nia Jax right in the head, and she walked off like, look, I'm the champ, pal. Stop messing with me. And having your title holders in control is just cool. It's just cool, and it just works. We also had take two between Shayna Basler and Natalia. And because we had impetus from last week, and because we didn't get 50-50 booking here, it's rather enjoyable. Up. It was another hard-fought contest as they laid their stuff in, and really this was a who can get their submission on first match. Natalia was able to apply the sharpshooter, but Shayna Baszler was able to get out of it. She then transitioned into the Kira Fuda clutch, and poor Natty, she had to tap out like a fish out of water. She was super pissed afterwards though, and started to destroy the Kevin Owens show set that was being set up at the time, so that could be quite interesting. And the highlight of all of this is when Samoa Joe talked about Natalia's behavior and went, well, that is ridiculous. It was great. Thankfully too, the Kevin Owens show itself was exactly what it needed to be, it can have an up. Owens had told us he had been away nursing an injury and then welcomed his guest to the show, which was Zelina's Angels. And straight away you could just still see there was tension between Andrade, Angel Garza and Austin Theory. They clearly hadn't made up from last week. KO knew this too and stood on the apron for most of it, which Zelina Vega found offensive. But as Kevin told us, no, I am just giving you some space, especially because I don't want to clutter the ring, because we have another guest and it was the returning Apollo Crews. And he showed fire here and he showed edge and he showed attitude and he just started to whip so much ass and I sat on my sofa going, yes Apollo, you get them 2, 3, 4 years of absolute crap and now you can climb to the top. It also led to a tag match between Apollo Crews, Kevin Owens taking on Angel Garza and Austin Theory, and we just had stories coming out of our ass here because not only did Austin Theory accidentally click Angel Garza, and we'll talk about that more in a minute, Apollo Crews got the win here in around about 2 minutes, and once again Apollo Crews looking like a badass. And like I say, we weren't done because afterwards Zelina Andrade and Angel Garza decided, Austin Theory, you are nothing but a jabroni, you are a schmuck, you are a schmeral, and they started to lay in the boots. So he is out of here. They even threw a chair at him at one point, and what I really loved is, look at all the connective tissue here. One story flowing into another story. We are back. We then did cut back to Charlie, and she was smiling here like she hadn't just seen a live mugging in the ring, and she was talking to Drew McIntyre. He shall beat Baron Corbin later with a Claymore kick. As it turned out, this was a spoiler. It was then time for our axe throwing contest, and I just can't help it. For starters, I like being outside of the Performance Center. It just feels fresh and it's good for my eyes. And also, it's just so stupid, I can't help but enjoy it. Up. Not that it made any sense, mind. At one point, Ford threw an axe and it went so high it basically hit a tree. And then when Dawkins tried to do it, we were given the insinuation that he had hit a horse. As it turned out, he'd actually hit a water barrel. And Eric and Ivar were devastated by this, like nobody had introduced them to a tap. Like watching California Man. We cut back to this later as well, where the contest was going on properly, and as it turned out, each team had 10 goes, but to get any kind of points, you had to make sure you hit the bullseye. And of course here, Eric and Ivar got bullseye after bullseye after bullseye, and Dawkins and Ford, well, they absolutely sucked. The problem was though, one of their wry axe throws smashed into a cop car, and the cops turned up and they were like, who did this? What's going on? And they decided the way they would figure out who the guilty party was to watch them axe throw, and whoever was best, whoever had the most skills, clearly was gonna get in trouble. Is that how they solve murders now? They give a murderer a knife and go, can you just do some stabby, and if you do stabby really well, we're gonna put you in jail? That was dumb. Anyway, it did all tie into what we'd seen last week, because Dawkins was like, look, we're crap, and we'll prove it to you right now. He turned his back to the board and threw it, but of course this time it whammed right in the center, and they were gonna get arrested until the female police officer said that she found Ivar attractive. Could have done without that last bit, but look, I tell you, it's nonsense. I'm a nonsensical person, a bald asshole. I got a kick out of it. It then turned out Murphy was pulling a double here this evening because he also had a match against Aleister Black. And look, this ended in a disqualification. Now, once again, the fallout from this made it worthwhile, but I really do think if WWE wants to tell two stories that are kind of identical, you should do one in 1 week and one the next week, and then not just give us DQ after DQ after DQ after DQ after DQ after DQ after DQ. So that part has got to get it down. However, again, I mentioned the narrative and it's damn good, so that part is getting an up. Because basically, Austin Theory was still at ringside here, aka Murphy, from a couple of months ago, and Seth Rollins went up to him and started to give him his love, give him his power, give him his guts and say, Austin Theory, come and join me and I will take you to the promised land. And then just when Aleister Black was about to win the match, he went, go get 'em boys. And Austin Theory got in the wing and him and Murphy beat the schlub out of Black, and of course that caused the disqualification. Once this was done though, all three ruined Aleister Black, and afterwards they all embraced. So Austin Theory has now joined Seth's flock, and I think that's absolutely great. I mean, it does mean next week he's just going to be called Theory, which is the worst name ever, but I'm excited to see where this goes. Good one. Ow. Also had Apollo Crews in the back bigging up his big return and how he is going to get a US Championship match against Andrade, and he even just got rid of Zelina Vega, who came up going, you're going to lose your other leg. He was like, no I'm not, I'm going to become the champion. You know what? He absolutely must. It was in our main event, which was of course Baron Corbin versus Drew McIntyre. It was fine, it was decent. Up. Now the best thing of all of this is WWE has now established that if you're able to get a 2 count on Drew, you are basically a wrestling hero, because that's what kept happening here. No matter what Baron busted out, Drew McIntyre would get his shoulder up at 1. I think that's such a good gimmick. It does make it more painful that there's no fans in attendance, because I think they'd be going nuts for this. As it turns out, this was just a transitional match too. Drew McIntyre did hit the Claymore kick, Baron Corbin went down, he was pinned clean, you can't touch the champ. And that's because the main threat was coming from Bobby Lashley and MVP, who did appear before this at the top of the rampway. Now, I really want to understand what WWE's obsession with murder is, because once again, Bobby Lashley got on the microphone after MVP had said a few words and went, "Drew McIntyre, I am going to rip that title from your cold, dead hands." And even Drew was in for this. Once he beaten Baron, he looked at Bobby Lashley, who was still there. He was like, "I want to see the killer Bobby Lashley. I want to see." What is with all this murder? I don't mind it though. I really don't. I've wanted to see Bobby Lashley in a world title program for ages. Him and MVP, like I keep saying, just work so well off each other. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go watch them in TNA. And even if this does turn out to be a one and done in Backlash, that's cool. Drew McIntyre is your project right now. Him beating Bobby Lashley, well, that's a massive scalp if you ask me. It's good for his CV. Unfortunately, I do have to end being a negative Nancy because I don't want to be a hypocrite to everything that I've said before. But this was just another idea where your contender comes out and says, "Oh, I'd like a championship match, please," even though I've done nothing over the last few weeks. And our champion goes, "You got it, pal. I can't wait to do some fisticuffs." Now, this is a little bit better because there is this underlying current between MVP and Bobby Lashley and their burgeoning relationship. But you know why Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar were so good? Because we had everything with the Royal Rumble first. Now, I get you can't do that all the time because the Royal Rumble is once a year, but between Seth Rollins and Goldberg and Roman Reigns, with people just asking for things, I just think we could be a bit more creative, especially at the moment, right? That's all I'm saying. It's not bad. I'm actually enjoying this, but I gotta stand true to my beliefs, and it gets a down. Otherwise, though, I kind of thought Raw flowed quite nicely. There's not a lot going on, but the things that are going on tick my boxes. It can have an up. Now, don't forget to leave a comment below and let us know what you thought about last night's episode of Raw. Like the video, share the video, subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling. Do this with your hands. Then head over to WhatCulture.com, read yourself some articles, follow WhatCulture on Twitter, WhatCulture WWE, and watch more videos here on WhatCulture Wrestling. My name is Simon from WhatCulture. Thank you very much for joining me as always. And just to reiterate what I said at the start, anything could have happened when I was filming this video, but all my thoughts, all my wishes, everything I've got inside of me to Shad Gaspard and J2G and his wife and his just whole family. I really, really, really hope everything is going to be all right. I'll see you soon.